You're on.
Yes, thanks.
Okay, it's January 6th. I'm going to call the meeting to order. First order of business is to pledge allegiance to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moxie, that'll get you going.
Public input. Any public input this morning? All right, seeing none, gonna ask that we review the minutes. Friday, January 3rd. Any changes or corrections?
I'm all set.
Look fine to me. Move approval as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I've got the minutes from December 20th, which we approved, but we need to make an adjustment. It was on page 2. I don't know if you guys got a copy.
That was because,
She listed 2019 warrant articles and they were 2020.
so, I move we amend the December 20th minutes to reflect that it's a 2021 warrant articles that were discussed.
Where was that?
Page 12.
December
It's-
3rd, second page on December 3rd.
Okay, I don't have this.
No, that's from a while back.
Okay.
I was just looking at that.
You want to review it, Floyd? I'll send it on.
Fine. Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion. You got the motion?
I move,
Second?
yeah.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Appointments.
Do we have December 30th? Did we do that?
Yeah, we did that.
Yeah.
You did the 3rd, but did you do the 30th?
No, we didn't do
This
the
is the
3rd
only
yet.
minutes I have. Are there more?
It should be the 30th and the 3rd. I thought you did, this was the 30th.
All right.
I have nothing to add.
So, I'll move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. First appointment is Chandler Road and Shirley Way. Jeff Newcomb.
Hello.
Morning.
Come on down.
Come on down.
What's up? Aside from your road falling apart.
No, everything's good.
No.
Just the road. That's our issue. As you're aware, it's in horrendous shape. It's disappearing. It's lots of it is just like a puzzle, chunks of it held together by a wish and a prayer, I guess. As you're probably aware, it never received a top coat, as from what I'm understanding. When it was done, I don't know, 12 years ago or more. And it's, in my estimation, I don't want to be dramatic about it, but there's places where if you don't swerve around where the road's gone, your tires are going to be in the dirt. And it's a hazard because you have to go around certain places. It's not a big deal, but it's a deal. It's been neglected, and I guess many of us don't understand why other roads are being paved that have top coats, and this road has been 10, 12 plus years with no attention whatsoever. And I'm no road expert, But it appears to me and others that you can't just put a top coat on it now because it's so deteriorated and gone. And there are cracks in, as Lloyd knows, he drives over it every day, coming down Chandler that are, you know, this wide. And then go up around the corner where Shirley starts, the pavement is gone, and every year the plows, not their fault, but they're scraping it up and taking more away. The culverts down Chandler are full, and that water's going under the road, according to Andrea. I'm sorry, I don't know Andrea's last name, that lives on Chandler, the only house there. And I feel, and we all feel, and there's others that would like to have come, that this needs to be addressed and addressed soon. I heard rumors, again, unsubstantiated, I've only been there, well, coming up on 6 years, that this was supposed to have been attended to several years ago, and it's never been done. I understand there's one other road in town that only has a base coat. I think it has 2 peck lane or something. But you know, we've got 34, 35, 36 houses down there, and it's in bad shape. And that's it. We're just looking for this to be put in the budget and be attended to as soon as possible, and not be put off any longer, because every year it just gets worse and worse and worse. There was a little sinkhole near my house one day, and I mean, it's not a big thing, not a sinkhole where you take your car, but it's just going away. So,
Well, we were hoping to have our road agent here today, but he's called in for whatever reason. He's decided not to come in.
He's sick, yeah.
Because we've got a couple other projects that we're looking at. I've heard about Shirley Way for 2 years, 3 years now. Is there
I'd like to read a statement into the record.
Sure.
Here are your copies. Please give one to Karen. This is the map that we're talking about. This is background. Shirley Way is a residential road with 34 residents located on an average of 2-acre lots each. There's potential of 4 more building lots. There are 2 other single-access roads that branch off of Shirley Way. They are Blue Heron Drive and Woodland Drive. And there are houses there, and there are potential building lots. Shirley Way is 5,070 feet. Woodland Drive is 436 feet. Shirley Way has a single base coat of asphalt installed almost 2 decades ago. The road agent study of FY 215 recommended resurfacing in fiscal year 218. Jim isn't here to discuss that. The Lakes Region study of 2018 said the roads need work, and it gave it a yellow designation. What you don't know is Lakes Region study said that Shirley Way work should be done in 2026. That's why I have problems with their study. FY 2001 10-year plan denotes that the normal pavement performance goes from fair to poor within 15 years. What you've heard today is understated. Needed repair work. There are 2 culverts that need to be rebuilt in the lower area adjacent to Copp's Pond side of the development. Substantial water is trapped there today inside the curve. It needs to be released so that you dry out the underground roadbed before you do any work. At the intersection with Chandler Road, the culvert is at a right angle, an acute angle. It needs to be re-engineered and run straight and discharge the runoff on the other side of Chandler Road. As you turn off Chandler Road and go up the hill to Shirley Way, the roadside needs to be rebuilt for about 900 feet. An extensive amount of water should be running down a paved swale, not into the road. The pavement is badly damaged by subsurface water. Anywhere, Jim Bean tells us, anywhere you see alligating of the pavement means that there's water underneath the road, and you have to eliminate that.
What's that word?
Alligate.
Alligate, is that where it's chunked?
Alligator.
I was gonna say, we got gators up there. Okay, sorry, I didn't know what that word was.
It creates an ice condition in bad weather. It creates a serious issue for snow plows and all vehicles. There are currently, that should be 34 current residents that generate heavy traffic throughout this complex. There are school buses, delivery trucks, service vehicles, and several residents have heavy business vehicles. Since this is a single access to 109, every family member drives that road at least twice, going out and coming back. This is an editorial comment, because I'm going to be talking about Chamber Way in a minute. There is an estimated $250,000 in annual collected tax dollars from this development. Would anyone entertain the possibility of the town and the residents using a betterment easement possibility? Thank you.
What was the last
Yeah,
statement? I didn't understand that. The better easement, I don't know.
I think that's kind of a slippery slope, not
Right.
to get into too many crazy metaphors, but I mean, it's a town road. We start charging the people that live on town roads individual
To fix-
betterments to fix the roads in front of their house. I think that's not going, I don't think that's gonna go anywhere. And it
Right.
probably shouldn't.
I agree with you.
I know that we've worked through the budget for this year, so it's kind of late in the day for adding. But I can see and this is just me talking, I can see the culvert repair and the drainage issues being addressed in 2020. We probably need to do that anyway before we start thinking about paving it.
Right.
I don't know what the holes look like. We've got pictures involved here, but you know, whether they can be patched for a year or whatever. We're waiting a day to patch, but. And it doesn't sound like, and I haven't been out there, you live there.
Yes.
It doesn't sound like just the top coat's gonna fix the problem. Whether we can even top coat it or what's there.
Well, the other part, gentlemen, is, as well Lloyd knows, the road is not level anymore. It goes like this, where the cars are, you know, it's, so.
Yeah, because the base is.
The base is settling and, yeah. So to me, again, you know, your road guy, Jim, right, Dean?
Yes.
I mean, he's the expert, but it seems to me and seems to us it's got to be just torn up and redone. Now, whether that's, of course, we'd all like it done in 1 year.
What they do is they reclaim the road. There's a special machine
Yeah.
that breaks it up and it becomes gravel, and they actually,
Grade it out again.
and then maybe add some other gravel. We've done this on all our roads so far.
Yeah.
And it is the way to go.
Yeah. So, yeah, I appreciate so far, you know, that y'all understand that it's bad and it's affecting our property values and safety and everything else. So I appreciate that.
A couple of observations that I'll make. Number one, the fact that you never had a top coat put on the road doesn't help with the longevity and with the serviceability.
Of course.
And I wasn't around at the time, but when the development was done and completed and signed over to the town never should have accepted it without the road being complete. We can't fix that. I mean, that was a long time ago. But if that had been the case, then the issues we're dealing with today would have not have been as.
May I add something to that?
Sure.
Basically, the money that was going to go for paving was given back to the developer.
See, that,
So we basically, back then, we were responsible for the upkeep of the road and initially the snow plowing. But because of state law, when you have a situation like that, the town is required to plow it because of safety reasons. This is the answer I had. I spent 8 years in legislation. One of the things that people don't understand is that if we hadn't if the town of Wolfboro hadn't lost a lawsuit, we probably would still never have that road paved. The town had turned us down considerably a number of times. Wolfboro lost a lawsuit because there was a contractor who had a development, met all the requirements, and they refused to pay it. We brought it to court and lost. I stood up at the town meeting, along with the selectmen, and said, you have to do it. And you know, it was a damn close vote at that point in time. So I'm saying, the citizens were not happy, I think, to see us, number one. But again, it took a gun to their head to get the road initially paved. When Jim Beam took over the job in, I think it was 2008, I met him in the lobby, and I mentioned to him the fact that it had never been finished, just passing. And 12 years later, not a damn thing's been done. We've waited over 12 years. I'm one of the guys that's been bitching about it. And he mentioned some work was supposed to be done in 218. I'm the reason why. Because I'm not detailed, I'll be honest about it. Because the longer you wait, the more it's going to cost. Plain and simple. Because the deterioration continues to get worse.
Right.
Well, I'll shut up after that, but it has a long history in terms of us having to have the upkeep and the large snowfall.
Can we move on to Chandler Road?
Are they not all in the same bucket?
There's other issues with Chandler Road.
All right, well, I think at some point in time, I appreciate your report, and I think it's a good idea
Yeah,
to have a report.
The only comment I have on Chandler Road is it does not currently meet the requirements,
We got
the town requirements,
town requirements for what?
road building.
Well, how long has it been a town road?
But Chandler Road's been a town road for a million years.
Well, I have a question.
Sure.
Why is it when our roads, we don't try to get up to what are the legal standards?
Well, and hopefully that's a rhetorical question. Boy, I mean, you're sitting here with me. I'd like to have all of our roads up to standard. It's,
And one thing to keep in mind with old roads, in the current standard that we have in the town code is for current construction. If you went back and looked at what we had 30 years ago, the road standard was different. So over time, we've upgraded it to make new roads that come into the town be more durable and perform better. And I don't know how long Chandler's been around, but as a town, we got lots of town roads that if we looked at the current spec for building a road, won't comply.
So Chandler Road's coming from 109
Up to Shirley Way.
Up to Shirley Way. So you're looking at a length of 1,100 feet.
Yes.
So, I mean, I guess the problem I have, or the issue I'm dealing with here in January 6th, is that we've got the 2020 budget pretty well ironed out.
Yes.
We've got $6,600 in culverts and catch basins in the road budget.
Yes.
Shirley Way would eat the $6,600 up in a heartbeat. By the
Correct.
sounds of it.
Correct.
The paving budget didn't foresee paving Shirley Way, and it's not ready for paving anyway.
Correct.
So I think the only alternative we have is to either create a project for 2021 or create a warrant article for 2020.
I understand. My information is just making this information available.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting that we go with a warrant article this year.
Well, we gotta bite the bullet at some point in time. Maybe not this, I mean, we've sort of driven this bus as far as we can without this information, and now you're adding, I mean, $250,000 is not gonna happen.
I agree.
It just can't, not this year. Probably over a course of a couple of years, we might be able to do something like that, but.
You know, I understand that. I have no problem being incremental in our approach.
I mean, I wish Bean was here, because at least then we could talk about what he's got for road maintenance. money.
Right.
I mean, that's really the secret. If we could get the holes filled and the culverts cleaned out and the drainage fixed.
Anytime you got drainage issues, that needs to be addressed before you do anything on paving. And so that's an obvious first step in dealing with the problems.
Well, if that could be done this year and let everything settle out drainage wise and get all that done, understand the budget, and make sure that it's addressed in 2021 in terms of the pavement. Obviously, I think we'd all like to see, because we're all in different places on the road, like the whole thing done at once. But if, incrementally, that's necessary budget-wise, that's what we have to do. I mean, that's what Wolfboro just did downtown on South Main, which looks ridiculous to me, to do the section then nothing, and then a section then nothing. But maybe to take the worst sections, according to Jim Bean's analysis, would be the way to address it over 2 years. Hopefully no more than 2 years. But if you can get it somehow, find the money to get the drainage issues and the culverts and all that done, then let it all settle out, and then it's ready to go in 21. I think we would be reasonably content with that.
Yeah, and I think we need to get Carol over there to take a look.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't sound as though it's just a matter of laying out paving. It sounds like it's a matter of regrading that whole thing. And there's some compaction issues.
Chandler needs even more work. There's a hill that needs to be leveled off the intersection.
And I appreciate where you're headed there, and I'd love to have everything done as well, but.
I understand as far as getting it done. This is just putting the facts on the table.
Right, I mean, we've primarily focused on through roads, Union Wharf, Ledge Hill, Sodom,
Dame Road, North Line Road.
Yeah. Federal Corner, so it's higher traffic roads is what we've been concentrating on. And we've got a couple of roads up in Meldon that are in the red zone that need to have some kind of work done. But they're once again neighborhood roads.
Well, I went back to
difficult.
the Lakes Region Planning. They have this section of town all yellow, which means needs serious work. And they put it back, they put Chandler Road for 2027 and Shirley Way for 2026. And at that time.
They aren't mandating you follow their program
This
exactly.
is,
They're
this was
just
their
trying to come up with
suggestion.
something.
And it's subject to change and
And
adjustment.
subject to the squeaky wheel too. I mean, we've got
Right.
the squeaky wheel in front of us right now.
And there are more squeaky wheels that couldn't be
I'm
here.
sure there's probably dozens of them. So I think that, if we can make a point of saying we'll get being in there in 2020 to try to prepare for some paving.
Yeah.
And then get Carol to look at that so we can figure out what the actual number is, because the $250,000 is gonna put a chill down my spine. Because we only have a $285,000 paving budget. I'm not gonna eat it all up in Shirley Way as much as I love every one of the people that are sitting across from me.
Actually, the paving budget is $50 less than that.
Oh.
$50,000 less than that.
Yeah.
Because we rebuild the roads under the paving.
Right.
Okay.
Well, thank you for that.
These are copies
Appreciate
of my
it.
report.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
No worries. No, it's good.
In fairness, these two guys have pointed out that we have almost 50 miles of road in town,
Mhm.
and we're doing less than a mile a year. How do we get caught up? And these guys are always trying to balance.
It isn't gonna last for 50 years when we
That's
do
right.
it.
After about 10 or 15 years, our road starts costing you money.
Right.
But they've always tried to balance the budget and think of you taxpayers. So this is not my report is not a criticism of these guys
No.
here. They're great to
No,
work with.
listen, I understand that.
And we've tried to, and the study that Lloyd mentioned, the Lakes Region Planning Commission study, shows us with incremental increases in our paving and road building budget, which we need to do. I mean, there haven't been increases for
A while.
a long time. I mean, I remember in the 90s, it was 185, and then I went to 225. I mean, that's 25 years ago. So we're due to have to
Move things along.
incrementally move that up.
Well, thank you very much, appreciate it. May I don't know the protocol, may I bring up one other point that's completely unrelated to the town issue? Quick, is that okay?
Yeah.
I don't know how things work. Because I just found out about this, that Pier 19 grocery store has been sold.
That's correct.
Okay. And you know, they blocked off, the condo people have blocked off the docks with their gates and everything, which is their right, that's fine. But they used to allow to use that one side between the town dock and then their docks to go to the store. And
On the lake side or on the store side?
No, it was on the side of the dock that faces Union Wharf. It faces the wharf.
yes, yeah, they let people come in and go get ice cream and all
Several
that
places
stuff.
along there where
Well,
people-
now with their gates and their fencing and everything else and their signs, that's not gonna happen. My concern is for those of us who trailer, which I do, and of course many other folks, there's not gonna be any room for us to put our boats in and out. Because people are gonna come in, tie their boats up, go to the store, have their ice cream, and we're gonna be out of luck. So I don't know if there's any answer to that. I'm just bringing it up that we're gonna be pushed out, the locals, for everybody else who's coming to the store to get ice cream with their kids. And we're not gonna be a place for us. And the pier is hard to tie up to anyway. And the later in the season it goes, the farther out you gotta go, because there's only about yay much water next to it, closer to the shore that you get. So I don't know where to go with that, but
And I don't know, I'm not, I heard the store sold. I know that originally, the store owned some dockage as well as the store. I don't know how that transaction happened.
I just-
And with the new owners. We've got a warrant article probably for 2020 on reconstruction of the pier.
oh really? Great. I
So-
thought I saw that.
Union Wharf, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So those big posts to tie up your boat is,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not going anywhere, but it's not easy.
Right.
So, but it's just gonna be difficult for,
Yeah.
that's a town, we own that, right? The town owns that.
Yes.
Yeah,
the
so
town
it's
owns
gonna be
the wharf,
hard,
right.
you know, if I can't get my boat in there because somebody's having ice cream, you know, that's.
Right,
So-
and a lot of the island people that don't have dock space at 19 Mile Bay use that for whatever, going to the dock.
Well, and one thing we can do is we can make a portion of that area as a, you know,
In and out.
15-minute
Yeah.
tie when you're putting your boat in,
Yeah.
which would address
That'd be great.
the concern that you have there. So, now, you know, like everything else, we have to police it, because if we don't, then
Yeah, we're having trouble
it's,
with
it's,
that.
huh? Yeah, it's not gonna happen, but that is, I appreciate you bringing that to our attention. I'm aware of the fact that that's where people who wanna come to the store will have to tie up now, because the former arrangement for using the side of the condo docks is gone.
Yeah.
And I had broached the idea when, was it Rennie Pelletier and Mike Cryans were down there with me, dredging out that north side.
On the other side,
And, you know, I love the response was, well, it filled back in after. Well, yeah, it filled back in, it took 50 years.
Well,
to fill back in. I think
and that's one of the things we're looking at doing also, is to
you can
to
open up
have
that side.
parking on both sides of Union Wharf,
Right.
which will help the situation. But
Super.
that project isn't fully designed yet. Until it's designed, it won't be permitted by the state, and,
But he's due in here this month.
yeah. So there are several
Okay.
hurdles. What started out to be a fairly straightforward fix Union Wharf has taken some turns along the way that just draw the whole process out. We got more state agencies involved in the process, to get from where we are to where we want to be than we thought we were going to have to.
Because back in the 1880s and the 1930s, they didn't bother to ask the state, they just
did it.
Well, what happened is, as I recall, Union Wharf was built before most of the state bureaucracy that's there today existed. So those people who are in the food chain for getting this thing blessed and moving forward don't have any records of it because it was there before they came along.
Right.
Which creates an issue that apparently we have to go to executive council to get addressed, and we'll do that, but it's just, nothing is as straightforward as as we'd like it to be, for sure.
We at Pick Point have been in front of the executive council, as Mr. Crane knows.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
30 years ago.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Happy New Year. Appreciate it very
Yeah.
much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Blake. Appreciate it.
Jeff, nice meeting you. Thanks for coming in.
Jeff, thanks a lot.
Help us out.
Hey,
Dan, good to see you.
good to see you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Take care.
gentlemen.
Okay, next.
You had to bring that up.
Sorry, man.
Happy New
Good
Year.
morning, same to you.
All right, next we've got HEB engineering. So,
How are you? Good, how are you?
I saw it. I don't stuff.
Yeah, it's in your folder, I think.
Oh, it's right here. It is. Okay.
We paid these guys by the pound.
Yeah, no, I've got a couple of extra copies here for you to, I want to
Good,
share
okay.
with.
Is it different from this?
They shouldn't be. These ones I emailed this weekend.
Yeah.
And the one that came first, there were no changes, right?
There was just some cleanup on our plan. So
Okay, 'cause I
these-
didn't reprint it
There's
from a
no
week
text,
ago.
there were no text changes or any changes to any of the information, but these are completely updated, and the ones that I emailed were completely updated. So, before I get on, obviously, Josh with HEB, but this is Dan Lucetti. He's an engineer in training with HEB. Dan assisted me on the project and did the site walk analysis on both
Okay.
both roadways, just for the review of everything. So where do we want to start?
Wherever you want to start.
You want to start with Federal Corner?
Sure.
Does that work for you? So I'll give you a rundown of what we did as sort of the process for both reports, and then I'll let Dan give a summary of Federal Corner, and then I'll give a summary of of what he saw on site, and I'll give a summary of the sort of the solutions that we outlined. So Dan came out, did a full site walk, took hundreds of photos on an aerial photograph, some sketches and everything of what he observed on site, some analysis of roadway runoff. I had also been to both sites with Jim Bean ahead of time and sort of had a general understanding of everything as well. Dan and I spoke while he was on site for both roadways, just sort of reviewing and understanding what was going on. Came back, analyzed the existing conditions on a sketch so that we could understand it, and then Dan and I started working through alternatives. The alternative selection you'll find is there's a drainage alternative that is pretty much uniform for both roadways, not the same solution, but there is a drainage solution for each of these roads, and then there is a roadway reconstruction solution interior of the ditch lines. So the traveled way, if you will. And then we took that information with those alternatives and came up with potential construction costs. And again, we're doing this mostly on visual observations. We didn't have the ability to do ledge probes, and obviously on Ledge Hill Road, we're assuming there's ledge. I'm going to guess Federal Corner's got a little bit of that as well. So we've made some assumptions there that down the road it would be worthwhile, before you do anything, to really analyze what the depth to that ledge is and where it's located and where it may not be.
And how difficult is that to do?
The ledge probes are pretty
Yeah.
straightforward. You can come up with instead of doing big deep borings with a geotechnical group, they can come through and do almost twice as many ledge pros, which are just drill down to the depth of ledge and just drill back up to just get that ledge profile. They can do almost twice as many of those as they can do full borings with split spoon samples and so on. So it's it's not an inexpensive undertaking, but you can get quite a bit covered in a day. You definitely would be able to do all of Federal Corner in a day, and Ledge Hill a little bit more complicated with the traffic. But so we then, basically all of our solutions were based on visual observations. And so when we went through our construction cost estimates, obviously we haven't designed anything. So we added a 20% contingency to those our construction costs that are based on our sketches. We also included an estimate of what it might cost to survey, design, permit any activities, because there are wetland considerations on both roads, and then a certain level of construction administration, just so that you've got the whole picture from the beginning of the project all the way to full construction of what the cost would be. And those fees do vary based on the level of effort for reconstruction, specifically on Ledge Hill Road, where some of the roadway reconstruction considerations are more robust as you get into more full reconstruction alternatives than the others. So what I'll do at this point is I'll let Dan run down Federal Corner, what we observed on site, and then I'll sort of outline what our solutions were and some of the estimates.
So Federal Corner, obviously a gravel road. When I was out there doing the inspection, there's only
Still gravel.
it's still gravel. One residence and then a camp at the end of it. When I was out there was very low traffic. The only vehicle that I saw was someone was hunting, I think, that day, and I probably saw him 3 times driving up and down the road. So obviously understood during camp operation it's a different story. I don't know the level of traffic on the road, but the road is very narrow, obviously. The horizontal geometry is dead straight, so that was no concern, but the vertical profile, there's some concerns there. I think the steepest grade that I checked was about 18% on that first incline. The majority of the drainage pitches down to the low point, the southern side of the road, I believe by Burley, is that the intersection with? Where there is that wetland complex. There's a 24-inch CMP culvert at that crossing, and when I was actually out there, someone was getting water from the wetland, and they had indicated that that road floods frequently in high rain events, not at the location of the culvert, just a little bit further north at the bottom of that slope. So the low point of the road is not in line with where the culvert crossing is. So I think my first guess was adding in another culvert or replacing that culvert to allow the wetland to flow east to west would save that road from flooding. As I said, obviously very narrow. I think it's about 17 feet in width on traveled way. The shoulders were very cluttered and debris filled, under-maintained in my eyes. There's a lot of washout from gravel shoulders. Obviously it's a gravel surface road, so with the steep profile too, when runoff is flowing down that road, they'll pick up some speed and erode out the shoulders, pulling that sediment into the ditch line, clogging up the ditch line, taking away from volume on it. So what those ditch lines can store mainly on the east side, whereas the west side kind of sheet flows off down into space. So there isn't as many concerns on the west side of the road as the east side because of,
The east side is the uphill side,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
yes.
As I recall from conversations with our road agent, one of the challenges there is the ledge in terms of being able to adequately ditch on the uphill side.
And that's what the uphill side outside of the ditch line was often very steep, and getting a deep ditch down and then tying back in if there's ledge right there would be fairly difficult. But as far as the shape of the ditches, even they were very, very narrow and shallow, filled with leaves. There were some drainage culverts that I had to find by kicking around leaves, a foot or so of leaves, and then seeing a low point with some standing water, took my boot and moved it around, and there was a foot plus of leaves plugging up the culvert. Or that happened in a couple locations. So that obviously just on the east side, as we said. The west side, everything naturally just drains downhill. The material for a gravel road out there appeared to be good. It didn't appear to be overly rutted or washboarded or potholed like some gravel roads do. And I think that's more or less because water has the opportunity to get off the roadway surface and not pond and saturate the gravels and remove as many fines where it's that the steep profile can just sheet flow off down to the low point, but then that will cause the erosion on the shoulders of the road. The culverts that were in place also appeared to be poorly installed. There were some culverts that were bowed. So looking down the culvert, I could see the top part of the culvert looking at the outlet. So there's a hump in the culvert, so water isn't allowed to freely drain from one side of the road to the other.
Which could also be ledge.
If they couldn't get the culvert down deep enough, they
We've seen that.
placed it like this, and it still provides relief, obviously, but not the best. And then my thought was, there's definitely a need for stone line ditches because of that high velocity runoff that's creating that scour and erosion of the gravel surface and the ditches, depositing all
So
the
you line
sediments.
the ditch with riprap?
Yeah.
Yes, because at every outfall, every drainage outfall or culvert outfall, you could see a pile of sand and cobble and stone.
And that's some of the challenges you get with gravel roads is, especially in communities that we have in the northern part of New Hampshire, is that they're all gravel because generally they're on a they're steep roadway or not underserving, but serving fewer residences than average. So it becomes a cost consideration at the initial construction and then a maintenance consideration. But what you find is the gravel surface inevitably is going to contribute sedimentation to the ditch lines. And then you're also creating ditch lines that aren't able to be stabilized. You'll never, because at 18% or even greater than 11%, you have a hard time creating grass line ditches that will be able to be maintained without eroding down the center of it. So once you get up of that, it's usually about 8 to 11%. We recommend stone line ditches just to keep that sedimentation from, it'll always come off the road, but keeping the ditch line from eroding and then your shoulders from eroding down, it provides a structural side to the gravel road. Now, the other side of that is the long-term maintenance of stone line ditches from the rural communities like the ones we work in. Well, we hear a lot of complaints, well, we can't, any sedimentation that goes in there, we can't get it out. And yeah, there's a level of refreshing every few years that you're gonna have to do with some of those stone line ditches, but what we were finding at I think the driveway culvert at the residence and in some of the crossing culverts, you've got a foot of sand sitting in the mouth of that culvert, along with leaves on top of that, and it's not atypical. I mean, that's what you see on every gravel road if that you maintain. But the road surface itself, good. It's a good material, but you're gonna lose some of the fines off of that, and then just having steep grades and a ditch line, which is right on the edge of that roadway, is gonna take some of that material and just keep bringing it down to the low point. So you lose capacity in your ditches to manage the high flows. You lose the capacity in your culverts to discharge across. So
So do you need to increase the size of the ditch on a gravel road because of that?
Well, more often than not, the goal for ditches is to try to get them between 18 inches and 2 feet. And what that does for you is it removes the drainage out of the material, the base of the roadway. On paved roads, you'll see that issue show up in heaving. So when water becomes trapped in the base gravels of the roadway and doesn't have relief, it freezes and heaves the road. So what we try to find is a ditch depth that, especially on a paved road, which we'll get to for Ledge Hill, is a ditch depth that is below the bottom of your select gravels, so that any water that comes up or any water that may get in through cracks has relief on both sides.
To migrate out.
Correct. And both of these roads, and I'll get to it with Ledge Hill, both of these roads have this opportunity on the downhill side, which is really nice because you do have downhill relief on the far side that I think, as much as Ledge Hill Road seems fatigued from pivoting over there, fatigued on the pavement surface, it's actually in pretty fair condition for a rural paved road that has been around for a while. Like but I think that's because it has the runoff relief. But pivoting back to Federal Corner, our recommendations are to construct 2-foot deep ditches or to the depth that you're able, which we have some caveats in there, identify what that ledge depth is. And then line them on the areas that are steeper. Down in the lower parts, there are some blow-offs where the water does, disseminate off to the sides and it doesn't run the whole length, it distributes itself. The lower flatter parts, we recommend grass line ditches because the velocities inside those ditches and the ability to stabilize it is there. But in the steep portions of it, we do recommend trying to get as deep as we can some grass line ditches, reworking the interface of the residential driveway that comes down to ensure that there is drainage off the driveway that comes into the ditch lines and then can contribute or continue down the roadway ditch lines.
So the water coming down the driveway doesn't all run out on the road? Is that-
The driveway, there was evidence of runoff from the driveway surface coming into the road, but there was also evidence of runoff that was getting off the driveway, coming down sort of a poorly defined but existing ditch line on both sides of that driveway, coming into a culvert that was plugged or basically not working in any way because of the sedimentation from uphill. So it's coming down. Some of the driveway is coming into the road and putting some runoff in there, but even the stuff that's coming down the roadside, the driveway side ditch, wasn't able to use the culvert that discharges diagonally across the road. So there needs to be a better interface between that driveway and the culvert and all of that to ensure that water is getting there. So for the most part, the high side of the road, we're recommending deeper, as deep as we can get, roadside ditches, or recommending resetting the culverts with head walls. So that resetting because they need to be, if you're going to get deeper ditches, they're going to have to be lower. If they're RCP, we'll reuse the RCP. If they're corrugated metal pipe, we would replace them with HDPE. But head walls will allow the opportunity for those pipes to sit cleanly, not allow water to be introduced underneath the road, and create just a good stopping point for the water to get in. Lower level, shallower ditches, grass. And then the upper area or the low side of the road, there are some areas where the road is sort of bermed. So you've got your road and then you've got a berm and then it pitches way down. We have recommended leveling off that berm, which would have some relatively significant tree removal. Because there's positive drainage or positive pitch toward, I think it's the west on that side, that berm would provide a lot of relief of some of the roadway runoff. So our recommendations for roadway, that's our general recommendation for the drainage, the roadside drainage alternatives, along with the replacement of the culverts. And then we recommend two alternatives interior to the drived area. If we want to maintain a gravel road, we recommend it being regraded at a 4% crown. Gravel roads require just a little bit more to get that runoff off. Or the other alternative is to pave it. We provide a 2% crown, which would reduce the amount of sedimentation that exits the roadway surface. It would increase the velocities to the water in the ditch line, but we still have the same recommendations for stone line ditches in the steep areas, which would mitigate some of that. We'd be looking at a roadway width, I don't know what we recommended here, but I think it's 18, so it's somewhere in the middle of the variable. I think it gets down to 17 and goes up to 20 in different areas. It's hard to tell what's road, what's beginning of ditch, and so on, but an 18-foot wide roadway surface, and then work the ditches off of that.
I'm sorry, did we just jump from Ledge Hill back to Federal Corner?
No, we're on Ledge Hill.
We're still on Ledge Hill?
Yes.
No, we're on Federal.
Federal Corner, sorry. Federal Corner.
Okay.
We're on Federal Corner, sorry. So the alternatives from our standpoint, interior to the road.
This is the can.
Oh, okay. Good. Probably all the traffic that goes up there and
That's
in the
probably
middle,
me.
yeah, in the middle. But I mean, it's in good. The road's in good shape. So like as a gravel road, it's working. It seems structurally sound. The material is sufficient. It's just that sedimentation and drainage concerns that just aren't quite operating. They're operating typical to a gravel road in the environment that it's in, but not probably ideally. So
Is that going to mitigate the flooding? Just changing to a 36-inch culvert?
Putting it in the right spot, I think, would help. And I think we actually recommended keeping the one that's there, and adding one at the low point is sort of the solution there.
Doesn't seem to me you gain anything by removing
No,
an existing culvert.
that's what we said. Clean it out, we get the drainage directed, continuing to direct to it, but put something at the low point. And, there's a very distinct low point, and the culvert is several, it's 10 or 20, 45 feet away from the low point. So I can't, without doing a full analysis and having, having surveyed and have the topo and being able to analyze how much water is coming there, we wouldn't know if the roadway surface would need to be raised at all to prevent that, but we definitely think it would help. But as part of the design that would come down the road with this, those are things that would need to be considered as, a profile change there, maybe just to bring the road up at that low point.
So you're not doing anything about the grade issue?
We haven't addressed the grade issue
Okay.
right now, just because we don't know if that grade is fine with a culvert, or if with a culvert that grade needs to go up a foot.
Okay.
That's just something that would have to be part of that design, and our 20% contingency sort of allows for those things that we haven't quite analyzed yet. That's what that's like. So what we've done is we've created two cost alternatives for you as well. One alternative is, and both alternatives include the same roadside conditions. And then alternative one, I believe, is the gravel road alternative. And alternative number two would be a paved road alternative, which would include 3 inches of pavement, 1 inch of wearing course, and 2 inches of base pavement, which is standard roadway construction.
For about
$174.
$90,000 for pavement?
Yes, yeah. And actually we have those, we have our estimates, our estimates are in the back of the, it was about $59,000, but the other considerations for the pavement that go along with that would be a little additional to that, and then also some contingency that's attached to it. But with engineering, design, permitting, and all of that, you're at 174 to reconstruct that gravel road with roadside drainage, and you're at 265 for a paved road, is our estimate at this point.
It's a lot of money for a road that's not extensively used.
Yeah.
And then there are other things interior to this that you could address as well. You could look at putting a culvert at the low point, see what happens. You could look at, partially, there's probably an infinite number of alternatives I could have looked at.
You're presenting us with a project.
Correct, two projects, potential
Right.
projects.
And in addition to this, we have an alternative or other alternatives where we can say, well, let's do this piece.
Correct.
Let's culvert at the low area. Let's build ourselves a bigger ditch on the uphill side. All stuff that we can do as an adjunct to our normal maintenance work.
Correct.
Let's knock down the berm on the downhill side with some of these things.
And they're all outlined on the plan as like different areas of different things you can do with call-outs as to what can happen. And in the text of the report,
Right.
there's commentary about each of the items. So you could take this and you could carve off little pieces of it, for sure. And the same goes for Ledge Hill, except Ledge Hill is a much longer stretch of road, and so we had to sort of get into more common themes with some of that, like ditches and culverts and so on. But again, we do have the same sort of plan with the chunks added there as well. Were there any questions with what we've presented? I know we just got this to you late last week. Federal Corner, I think we had to you a while ago. But, any questions or comments or?
I have a positive comment. I worked with your firm extensively on turning the $485,000 Lane Pond project into one that only cost us $147,000. And HEB was there, first of all, headers on culverts. If anyone has any, and wants to do it on the cheap, you'll find out that we've saved money since those headers have gone in. The other thing is that you people recommended where the low areas are overflow, pave it. Since that went in, we've had 4 instances where the area is flooded and the road hasn't moved. And emergency vehicles can get through, and residents can get through. And by the way, we have 2 of those areas in town where, we've paved.
Yep.
Kudos, compliments, pat on the back. for their, I want that in the record.
All right, moving on to Ledge Hill Road.
All right.
Can I make any comments, usually on the corner? Am I allowed to?
Do we want to have public
If the
comment?
chairman recognizes you.
Sure, go ahead. Yeah.
Do we recognize this guy?
All right, make it quick.
If you'd like some insight, I'm happy to share with you my 27 years of commuting there multiple times a day and down that road. We've had several blowouts over the years. I have a pretty good sense of where the ledges are. I also have a recommendation with respect to the telephone, the anchor pole up near camp that creates an inability to have a ditch, which I'm sure Jim would like to try to get Jim and the co-op together a few years back to change the configuration there to help out. I would not be in favor of any sort of pavement. I don't think we can. We like our little rural gravel road. So those are my comments. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, moving on to Ledge Hill Road.
All right, so a lot of the, I'll let Dan run through what he saw, but we, longer stretch of road, different type of road. But one that you see almost everywhere in northern New England. It's windy, it's hilly, you know, it's pretty much everything that we ever really work on is windy and hilly and shallow ditches. And so I'll let Dan run through what he saw, but the process for this was exactly the same as the other. The solutions are different, but the process was generally the same.
So, more or less, I started down at Dane Road, worked my way up to 171 on the westerly side of the road, and kind of came back and analyzed the easterly side. Geometry of the road, once again, the horizontal alignment is nearly straight, with the exclusion of the turn coming down by Dane Road. No issues with that, obviously. There's no sight distance concern. The vertical geometry is fairly hilly, but more flat than Federal Corner, obviously. There's some steeper sections, but those steep sections then lead to flat sections that are either at a higher elevation or lower elevation. The grades were nowhere near as steep as Federal Corner, and much more forgiving. The changes in vertical geometry were much more forgiving. There's no honk rock on Ledge Hill Road, obviously. So the vertical distance, the sight distance wasn't a concern.
And just as a comment, I'm guessing if we wanted to take that rock out, somebody would squawk.
Well, when Jimmy went to move it about 10 years ago, we kind of went and hugged the rock and said, no, don't. But I think that would be a reasonable thing to do. It's a safety issue.
Yes, well, it is, right. And it's kind of a landmark, but it makes it more difficult to do road maintenance. And of course, the only two-way traffic you see up there is your guys. I mean,
Well, we get a lot of traffic, GPS people trying to go from 109A to 171 and getting stuck up there in the wintertime and be out there with my chain and stuff. But people, it's such a blind
I hope
spot.
you have your donation box out when you're helping get unstuck.
We're not for profit.
Yeah, that's right.
But you have to then cave into one lane to get around that rock. It's a one-lane road anyway, essentially, but it does force you in, and with a blind spot there, it is. I'm waiting for something to happen.
So, as far as the vertical, the geometric properties of Ledge Hill Road, there were very little concerns. Traffic is obviously much more significant on Ledge Hill Road. I couldn't give you trips per day, but
It's the second busiest road, and there's 11 companies that use it regularly, hauling gravel.
that's what I noticed. There's a lot of commercial use on
As a
it.
matter of fact, it's so busy that, not related to your project, there've been 3 people almost killed at the intersection of Tuftonboro Corner in the last 2 years.
There was a lot.
It's not related to your project.
Sure. There was a lot of commercial traffic as well as residential. Obviously, there's several residential developments along the road. The pavement surface, I was out there in November, so we didn't quite have a freeze thaw yet. There was cracking that was observed. It wasn't overly excessive in my mind. It was a typical northern New England paved road, longitudinal and transverse cracks running up and down side to side of the road. But there was a lack of fatigue cracking or alligator cracking, which is when the pavement more or less completely disintegrates typically in the wheel path of a vehicle, which signifies more or less complete pavement failure. And then the other cracking that occurred was on the shoulders of the road, due to the lack of shoulder gravel or a horizontal restraint to the pavement. So if there's a vehicle traveling on the edge of the pavement, there's no support or strength to that edge. So that was crumbling away, and that can then mitigate further into the road. But as far as rideability, it was fairly smooth on November 16th, and it was 19th, and it was fairly smooth today as well. So there weren't as many freeze, thaw, heaving conditions present. It didn't appear like it would be terrible, but in my mind, I thought the road was overall fair, the pavement surface of it. And then once again,
It's better today than it will be in March.
well, yeah, on the westerly side, more or less identical to Federal Corner for 95% of the road, I would say. Kind of just generally the grade falls away, so drainage on the westerly side isn't a major concern, because any runoff coming off the roadway surface is quickly getting far out and away from that area. There was one stream crossing. It was a 48-inch RCP culvert closer to 171 at one of the low points in the road. I looked at it, the outlet and inlet head walls are mortared with cobbles, really, and in some spots it appeared that there was a negative batter, so it looked like the head wall was leaning out a little bit away from tipping back in. The size of that culvert appeared adequate based on those conditions, but it wasn't hydraulically, or the hydrology was not analyzed to determine if it was fully capable of passing those 1,500-year storms that we're getting much more frequently now. Coming back from 171 towards Dane Road, looking at the east side of the road, it was more or less the same conditions that I was seeing on Federal Road. The ditches were too shallow, under-maintained, filled with sediment, filled with leaves, debris, preventing that free-flowing drainage condition for water to get to those culverts and then escape on the downhill side. The culverts appeared to be in good condition, aside from the plug inlets, outlets. I didn't see as many bowed or heaved culverts. They appear to have adequate depth below the road surface for cover, so they'd be structurally sound, they wouldn't get crushed. But just the volume of water that's coming from the uphill side on the easterly being dammed up by the road surface in the ditches appeared to be undersized. And then once again, the steep sections of the road profile, there were some signs of erosion in the ditches because of the higher velocity runoff. The runoff coming from the road into those easterly ditches was sediment laden because the lack of shoulder gravel butting up against the pavement. It was more of a sandy-like material. It was fairly soft. In some cases, I could step into it. It was raining that day, but I could step into it. My boot would sink about an inch. So it's loose, uncompacted, easily becoming eroded when runoff is running off the pavement surface into that ditch line, picking up that sediment, and then traveling downhill. And that's where, what I said, this shoulder gravel, if a part, there's tire tracks in it, but having that shoulder gravel compacted would provide a good pavement support if a vehicle were to go off the roadway surface, as well as limit the amount of sedimentation that exposed, unstabilized roadside material is contributing to the ditch lining.
There's a couple of other interesting existing drainage conditions that we weren't fully able to grasp. I think up by set 171, there's a closed drainage system that goes out somewhere that we weren't able to assess where it went or what happened to it, but I'm sure someone knows. So we just didn't have that information as part of the report. We're not anticipating doing much of anything with that closed drainage system. It sort of seems to be operating. Obviously, if we do any pavement or any changes in grade there, then we have to just adjust rims and so on. But
That's what there's, I think, two closed drainage systems really. The other one was going down. It appeared to be kind of an abandoned subdivision now. Don't know exactly where.
it's on our plan. It's 518.
Yeah.
It's called Lisden Road, Lisden.
Lisden Road.
Yes,
I-
there's a huge development down there.
Right.
That never was finished, but it is legally on paper. It has roads.
Right, so I went down that and I found on the east side of the road, there's a structure that had a pipe going under Ledge Hill Road and traveling down Lisden Road. And there's a small detention pond once you entered the development that appeared, I couldn't track it exactly, but it appeared to take some of the runoff from Ledge Hill Road down that way.
When you were there, was it snow covered?
It was not, no.
Okay, as you walk down Lisden Road on the left, there's probably 3 acres of 40 years worth of sand there. There's 3 acres that are completely destroyed if you ever wanted to do anything with it.
And then just the last note of the ditch lines, it said the ones that were present when I was out there were under-maintained, sediment-laden, debris-filled, but they're also very flat. In the cases where the road profile is flat, there could be some pitch applied to those ditches to get water moving instead of standing and ponding and then waiting for that water to build up to make it to those culverts. So the drainage concerns that I saw were fairly similar to Federal Corner, but I don't think they were as in poor condition compared to Federal Corner.
And the solutions are generally the same as well. You know, the only difference here is if you look at the sketch that we provided, there's more locations of grass line ditch, 1 foot and 2 foot deep grass line ditch versus on Ledge Hill or Federal Corner, more stone line ditching. And that's strictly because of the grades. It's a much flatter profile. It's not a flat profile, but it's flatter with respect to where you would want to have vegetated ditching versus stone line ditching. So we've outlined the areas that we believe stone line ditching and vegetated swales are appropriate. Again, with deeper ditches, we're going to have to, and again, same sort of caveat, now having done geotechnical investigations, knowing where the ledge is, try to get the ditches to be at least 2 feet deep or as deep as you can get it is how we wrote it. And then all the culverts that cross and even driveway culverts would have to be removed and reset. Most of them are in pretty good condition, but when we reset them, we'll put in, at least the ones that cross the road, concrete head walls. The downhill side of the road, there are a couple areas closer to the Dane Road side where there is where we are calling out ditching on that side, even though there's relief, but because of stone wall, there's a stone wall on the left-hand side if you're going up the road from Dame, that we want to be able to get some sort of swale in there to get the water off the road and down the road, but not impact that stone wall. So there's some areas where we've sort of shown some stone line ditching there. It's pretty steep interior to the stone wall, and then have it spill out to the downhill side and level spreader type of design where it would sort of sheet flow out into the westerly side of the road. But again, the solutions from the roadside are just, they're very similar. The solutions are get deep ditches. Because this is a paved road, you want that water out of your gravels, whether it's, you know, the gravels that are below the road now or in any of these newly reconstructed alternatives that we're proposing. The deep ditches will give that relief to reduce the amount of failure that you're going to see on the roadway surface, the cracking, the heaving, and so on. This one, because it's already a paved road, there are more traveled way reconstruction alternatives. The first one, and all of these reconstruction alternatives assume a 24-foot wide road for 6,280 feet, which was our length from 171 to Dane Road. Number one is don't do anything to the paved road, and just do the roadside drainage improvements. So what you see, option number one shows you the cost alternative for just doing the roadside drainage improvements and leaving the pavement as is. Not my preferred alternative, because if you're going to go do something, at least you could paint it black on top and make it look new at the end. So road option number two is to crack seal the existing cracks and then overlay it with 1 inch of pavement, which you'll find in your cost estimate is alternative number two, but you also find it to be the least costly alternative that addresses the roadway surface. Alternative number three is to reclaim that road, come in with a reclaimer, tear up the asphalt material underneath it into what's going to look like dark gravel, and then compact it and pave over it.
That's what we did to the other half. from his house.
Yep. And then the final option is to do a full depth reconstruction where you'd excavate out the material that's there, you'd put in new select gravels and a new paved surface, which you'll find to be your most expensive option.
Do you use PGA?
Not much.
Why not? It's free.
It is. It's not an alternative that we've really analyzed too much. At least it hasn't been an option on most of our projects.
The other thing, I didn't mean to cut you, I'm sorry.
Nope.
When you have ditches, it's like fire ponds. They're only effective seasonally, right?
Yeah, winters, we live in a winter environment, and almost everything we design as engineers is for the rain event, which is obviously not which half our year isn't a rain event. You do have to create opportunities for that water to still get into your ditch lines. So having the snowbanks interior to your ditch line is challenging. Being able to wing back and at least getting the snow off the edge of the pavement and into the gravel allows that water to retreat off the roadway surface. And often what you'll find is that you don't create as much of a snow curb for water to enter into the ditch lines if you can get it clear of the roadway. If it stays on the roadway, it stays cold, which sounds atypical because the pavement will heat up, but it will at least get your water off your road and not freeze on your road when it gets dammed up by snowbanks. You've got to be able to wing back at least at the elevation of where you want to enter your ditch to a depth that at least gets you to the inlet of your ditch. So that
Wouldn't catch basins solve all these problems? For example,
Sure.
all around Newfound Lake, all those towns got federal money
Mhm.
and have the same problem where water not only sheets off the road, but also
Sure.
down the side of a large mountain. I look at Wolfboro, for example, the state of New Hampshire, as you go from Westies down there, they've gone to catch basins. And our road agent says it costs $50 a year to clean out the catch basin. He likes catch basins because it takes the energy out of the water. So at Dame Road, for example, it's just regular water. It also takes the sediment out. So you really solve two problems.
Sure.
The other thing that you do is you now have a wider road that's used by trucks and used by cars. It's the second busiest road in town. Bicycles, pedestrians, people walking their dogs. I'm in favor of incrementally over a period of years, starting at Dame Road, put catch basins in.
So catch basin alternatives are ones that on steep roadways you find them as a preferred, the first option that you consider because it takes that need for having stone lined ditches and ditches that you can't maintain out. Typically you also find that with catch basins you're going to want to add curbing, which is neither of those alternatives are inexpensive. On roads like Ledge Hill Road, more often than not, the standard practice in rural communities in New Hampshire is they're not a closed drainage system. A closed drainage system is an alternative for this, but with that closed drainage system, you're going to take the alternative, our last alternative, and you're going to add curbing and catch basins to it. And the reason is for you to be able to install catch basins, for you to be able to install the closed drainage system, you're going to be tearing up that road in full anyway. So you're going to be looking at a full depth reconstruction along with your catch basin alternatives. Now there's sort of a hybrid solution where you could create a catch basin solutions inside the ditch lines that would allow for better collection and not chase the runoff.
This is what our neighboring towns have done.
Yeah. So there's alternatives there, but you do end up with a more robust maintenance system. If you do catch basins either way, whether they're in the roadway or in a ditch line, are going to need to be cleaned out twice a year. You're going to get deep sunk catch basins and you're going to get sediment in the bottom of them. And you're going to need to get them vacuumed or clamshelled. My recommendation would be twice a year, immediately in the spring or right after spring. And then once again going into winter, make sure you have capacity to get that sedimentation. If you do it in the ditch line, you may have to do it a little bit more because you get erosion that inevitably will happen in interior ditches, stuff that comes out from driveways. There's a more robust maintenance requirement that would be put on the community to have the basins. If you put them in the ditch line, you still have to do your ditch maintenance and the basin maintenance. And you've got to pay attention, because if you put them in a ditch line, you're going to put beehive grates so that leaves, when they wash down, don't overtop it, so you're going to have to get in there and clean those out. Similar to culverts, but...
We're currently spending $10,000 and just blowing leaves on that stretch of road, and it's not working.
Right. A closed drainage system is an alternative. It's not one that we analyze because it's not typical construction in the state of New Hampshire for a rural road like that. But I would say that
you're already
we're already at $1 million a mile for what we have for
Very
full depth
$1.3 million.
reconstruction. $1 million a mile is a standard reconstruction for a roadway that does not include closed drainage. And that's just it's always just sort of been the number. And when we finished our estimate and we looked at it, it was pretty much it was a little bit more than $1 million a mile at that point. And again, there was contingency in it. But so you're looking at for full reconstruction and adding closed drainage, you're looking pretty close to, it'll be more than that $1 million a mile for sure. And curbing is very expensive right now. Granite curbing has when I started, you could get a linear foot of granite curb for $15, and now it's more like $35 to $40 a linear foot for granite curb.
These other towns in the state used asphalt.
Asphalt curbing on the roadway. We've found limited success with that because of paving. If you catch a plow blade on that, you can peel up a stretch of asphalt curb quickly, unless your public works department, which is where we've seen it more often, has the ability to lay asphalt curbing. It's easier to repair, or it's cheaper. So it's cheaper to put it down the first time, and if you have 35 feet that needs to be repaired, you cut it out, and you can, like Play-Doh, you can lay that asphalt curbing. But that's an investment that those communities, like I think Laconia has one, the city of Berlin has one. They've utilized those asphalt curb layers as a means of having lower construction costs and being able to maintain it.
I didn't know that asphalt curbs were allowed by law in the state of New Hampshire.
Oh, they are, but nobody uses them. It's an inexpensive construction practice, but unless you're able to maintain it and fix it, it's not a recommendation from my standpoint.
All right, any other public input, private input?
This doesn't have to do with the engineering, but I want to second what Lloyd says. I go through the intersection at Four Corners 6 to 8 times a day for the last 30 years, and I have encountered these accidents, and I've believed that there was probably a fatality. There hasn't been, but it's coming soon. The snowbanks today exacerbate the situation. This morning at 6:30, I watched a car go straight through that intersection with a school bus coming down 100 yards up the hill. And I think it definitely is something that should be addressed.
Different project than this.
Yes, yes, but I wanted to...
Well, the state's waiting for us to come up with a human sacrifice before they're going to do anything.
There's
We
a,
did that
No,
in
but the state has also said, if we want to do some things with signage, that they're fine with it.
Well, we can put signs on our
Have you-
roads,
Right.
but we can't put any state signs on.
Have you considered a municipally managed project through the Transportation Alternatives Program for that intersection, where you can do work on both your roads and the state roads for safety improvements through the TAP program?
that's what we're working with Lakes Region Planning on. However, the state reminds us 171 is not eligible for federal funds. And my strategy is not to annoy the people we have to deal with. I mean, he
That's
helped.
not my strategy.
Well, actually it is, because you sat down with Mr. Cryans and Rennie and whatnot, and you were not adversarial like some of our neighboring towns are.
Why is it not eligible for federal funds?
I don't have the answer.
Because we did a project for the town of Tamworth that was almost exclusively a safety improvement project, and it was almost all under 16 million.
Okay.
What I will do is I'll make an appointment and buy you lunch and sit down with you. What happened is 171 used to be an unnumbered state highway.
Right.
And when work was done on both ends, because because I used to live right in the middle of it, and there's a lot of history there, so. But-
Seems like a good safety improvement project.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
federal funds would be
And
well
this-
served to help with.
And I know that the section of 171 from the Moltenboro line going east is a lower rated, if you will, highway
Mhm.
than the other section. So I don't know if that has anything to do with what.
I remember when that was built, when I was a kid going to Laconia, you had to go through Melvin Village because it was just a dirt road from the town line. Thank you.
You realize you're that old.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, sir.
All right.
Gentlemen, thank you.
You've heard enough.
Thank you.
See you again.
Nice to meet you.
Happy New Year, happy new decade.
You too.
Gosh, thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for tolerating me today.
Yeah,
Bill,
welcome
good
back.
Thank you.
Used up your good graces, so you're done.
Have a good day up on the hill, Nate.
Thank you, sir.
And now we have Larry Gill.
Come on down.
Happy New Year.
How are you?
Pretty good.
This is the monitoring of the landfill site.
Yes.
It's in the purple thing.
Okay. So have we sent out this RFP to Karen?
No, this is what the discussion's about.
Okay. And you've read the RFP as well?
Yes.
What do you think?
I think it's fine. It's fine. We approached it a little different way. One, I tried to give a background to the project. When we got involved in it, as you know, it was from a citizen's complaint. So that gave us an opportunity to, through Sanborn Head, to get a second opinion about all the data that's been collected. It's close to 30 years plus.
Right.
So we have a sense of not only what the issues are, but also what could be done going forward and what some of the other potential issues going forward, because as you know, with PFAS and all of those type of things, seems to be a constant, and a new chemical you have to deal with. And so our feeling is that it's not, if you just went with the Stantec proposal, you'll get exactly what you want. We have no issues with what they analyzed for. What we didn't get a sense from them was, well, how is this?
How's the
What's
world
going-
changed?
Yeah, what's going on with this? Where are we? That was disturbing to us because you have the Melbourne River, you have the Great Meadow. That's part of the headwaters of that resource. And you've got some chemicals in there that the data would seem to indicate that it is largely on the surface and not getting into any groundwater. It's just, the lower groundwater, which would be an issue. And it's also a relatively small landfill, if you will. I mean, it's not a huge source. You didn't have a huge amount of material there, but nevertheless, you wouldn't want to have that in what is probably rated by any number of reports, and Rick Vanderpool, one of the best water resources in the state. So,
Have you read the update that Clay Commission and Stan Tech has listed for the next year all the tests and what needs to be done.
Yeah,
what DES
that's
requires.
that's all part of the permit. So the state says this, you have to do this, this, and this. So if if it's the board's decision that that's what you want, that's what you'll get.
Now, the Stan Tech starts its testing in February, right?
Their testing is scheduled based on the state, and it is generally done in April, and they give you a report
Like
whenever
in
they
May.
get it. Whenever, yeah, it's supposed to be in May. That hasn't generally been the case.
But the state requirement is test in April, report in May,
Yeah,
right?
right.
And which is what we want to reflect in our RFP.
Yeah, and I believe that what I did is a recounting to, as I viewed my responsibility for coming up with that proposal. Okay, these are the issues that we have. These are the requirements that you have relative to the state. Give us a proposal and tell us how you will address these issues. I thought that we were very lucky to have Sanborn Head do that, because now you have there wasn't a whole lot of fault found by Sanborn Head with respect to what Stantec did. Their study was fine, but there have been changes not only in the technology and the how you monitor, how you can collect samples and so forth. And again, you get the caveat. So if you're looking here and the flow is over here, you're not picking that up. So there are different issues that are there, but generally they didn't have an issue. So I thought that was reassuring. So there's some general consensus about what has been done, but not necessarily how going forward. I believe, to my way of thinking, they brought up some issues in that second opinion that bear looking into going forward. The town has spent, considerable amount of time and money looking at those resources. You now have two valid opinions about what that data is. It is generally, again, I think they've come up with this general conclusions, but now you have some issues that, with respect to some of these other pollutants, that you want to make sure that you're not, that you're addressing those things, that they're not getting into the lower groundwater, that they're not affecting anything much.
So how would you see that modifying our RFP then?
Trying to come up with some language that takes the what I had put together and coupling it that with this is the state requirements, and I think you could do that.
I think someone could do that. I'm not sure I could do that, but. And you didn't create these post-closure monitoring laws for bids,
No.
so we need to. And
What he prepared is in there as well as Stantec's. So I think he's at.
yeah, I have Larry's letter.
Okay, great. And then
So-
Stantec's.
I made some revisions a couple of days ago, but they're minor.
Right.
Again, they just got some wording changes, really. So what I saw out of the permit that was, that you received on December 5th, that spells out exactly what you have to do.
But in addition to that, I think what you're suggesting is we need to do other work, or maybe compare the two studies that were done.
What I'm suggesting is that in the proposal that goes forward, that you bring those to prospective consultant and say, what do you think? Is there, when Stantec was here, I mean, I thought that they would say, well, you can do this, you can do that. All they said is it's going to cost more money.
Right.
I think that was a disservice. I mean, there are things that we could talk to the the state with about, is there any realistic way that we can modify some of the permitting that is required to get us to a better understanding of whether or not we have any issues that go beyond where we have them now. And there were a number of recommendations and observations about how you could sample a little differently. I don't know that that will cost any more money, but it might change some things in terms of the chemicals have different weights. And if you think of what they're going through sand and gravel, rock, and whatever. And because of their different weights, they kind of settle out different ways. So when they sample, what has been traditionally done is the old purpose, is you go down, you purge all that water, and then you collect your sample. Well, if this is a lighter fraction and this is a heavier fraction, and you jumble it all up, you don't get that sense. So one of the things that they suggested is that you have samples so that you collect here and then you collect here. So now you see this plume and this lighter plume. And I mean, that may not, and
So
I'm
I
not.
think we're talking two separate, but perhaps related things.
Yeah, I believe so.
All right, number one is the state requires us to monitor and report,
Correct.
okay? And we've been doing that with Stantec for a number of years.
Yeah.
And we want to look at alternative service providers, maybe, and that's what we're looking to do with an RFP.
Right.
Is to get service providers to respond and say, we'll do this, and the state specifies what has to be done and how it has to be done and when it has to be done. And the other piece is this, well, we saw some other things over here and maybe there are some different ways to address it. To my way of thinking, that's information that we would gather to help the town of Tuftonboro better understand some of this stuff.
That's my.
Okay, so separate from what DES requires. Now, it may influence if we provide some additional information that has some value to them, it may influence their requirement on us in the future and to cause them to say, well, we want you to do these additional things or these things differently.
In effect, they did, because if you read what the states, they want to look more at the seep, they want to look more at 1,4-dioxane, as understand that better. One, because they made changes to the standards, so 1,4-dioxane now has, I think it's an ambient water quality standard now, they've got a number to that. The impetus for not taking the seat was, well, because there are some sampling issues, that it's not an easily sampled point. Because you've got this groundwater that has very low oxygen now being exposed to oxygen. You have these chemical changes that are going on with things, so that the red and all that you see there is the iron precipitating out because now it's exposed to oxygen. And when it's not exposed to oxygen, it's free. So when it comes out and exposed to the oxygen, and now it lays down this color that was what was picked up by Jim Bitterman, I think his name was.
Yeah.
And that seep had been there for a long time.
So the state's adjusted our permit requirements
Correct.
based on some activity that we've done.
Yep,
So-
and also because of their new standards, new issues that they have with PFAS.
So do we need to change our RFP in any form other than to get it out on the street?
I mean,
So have some interviews? I mean,
if you,
we have to do the RFP part because
That's
that's our
right.
second permit. But we haven't hired anybody from that process yet. We haven't interviewed anybody from that process yet. So once we get to that interviewing process, isn't that the time when we bring up the additional work that we might want to have to do?
That then becomes an intangible, if you will, as part of the thought process.
Right, well then we
Yeah.
need Larry to explain it to you because I
Yeah.
can't explain it.
Right.
I mean,
I have a question.
Sure.
It's a functional question. The work that Stan Tech has been doing, I think we will want to go out to bid, right?
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But I have a question.
Sure.
When will the RFP be ready to go out? Any idea? It's going to be mid-January, right?
Well, I think it's pretty much ready right now.
Yeah.
Okay, let's say mid-January.
Okay. And how many weeks are people allowed to respond to it?
Well, we're gonna determine that. Can we get to the bottom line here? What are you thinking?
We're up against it as far as telling the budget committee what we need for money. Is there enough time?
We have money in there already.
Yeah, I don't know that it's gonna significantly change.
Let's
I
go
mean, it
forward.
shouldn't.
again, I haven't written an RFP, but I've been involved with some of those. So
Right.
the entry that I had, I think it's still the same, even though I made some revisions. Town of Tufton is seeking proposals from qualified environmental consultants to assist on the town's behalf. The environmental administration will form a town landfill located at 20 Sergeant Road and blah, blah, blah. Consultants should be familiar with all the requirements associated with all permits affecting this area, and a brief recounting of where it is. And,
And they can access all that information from DES.
oh, absolutely.
So I would have called Karen and get a copy of that.
Yeah, that's right. Well, this is the permit.
Yeah.
How do we make that happen? Is it a vote?
I think we, at some point, we're gonna have to go to put this thing out for an RFP, or we're gonna end up with Sandtech for another year.
By default, right?
I'm gonna have
So,
somebody do it.
so I move that we advertise a request for proposals for the landfill monitoring.
Okay.
I'll second that. And do you have a target date of when we open the bids?
Isn't it typically like 30 days?
Yeah, I think we gotta give them at least 30 days to reply.
I agree.
I can't imagine we'll be any less than 60 before.
When I checked, and I think Karen has actually provided this to me, the state has a list of consultants already, they've used it, they don't,
These
their
are
preference on
people
either one, yeah.
Qualified.
Yeah, and so it's a mail, I would assume that the way it's done is it's a mailing,
Yeah.
and you put it in
Well,
a paper.
Yeah, it's advertised in the newspaper. We can also send it to people on the
Yeah.
list. Yep.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we'll get the RFP out this week.
And do we want Cameron to negotiate the date they're due and the date we have the
Um,
hearing, we open the bids?
I don't know what's common practice, do you know, on these sort of things?
I don't know the timeline for this type of proposal, but, so I can do 30 days from the day the newspaper can post it.
Right.
If that's what it's
Yeah.
like. And I just need to know a little more clarity on what's going out. Is it a combination of Larry's and Stantec's, or like, so those kind
Well,
of things? I
yeah, we
can
need to,
help
it doesn't say Sandtech on it,
with.
but
That's correct, but,
we need to create something very similar to.
Do you have a copy of his correspondence?
Yeah.
not his slightly revised one, but
Yeah.
his first one, yeah.
Yeah.
Why don't you leave your revised one with Cameron?
So if it goes in the newspaper, it'll be on the 16th, right? Which is a week from Thursday.
Let's see, today's the 6th, that's
Sixth.
correct.
Right, won't get it next week. So if we give it 30 days from that for response,
So that's, 15
That-
days, so the 17th, or do you probably want them the 14th, February 14th?
So,
It's just under.
well,
We're not gonna
we meet
review
the
it.
11th and we meet the 24th.
Yeah, so.
So I would
Okay.
say the 21st of February,
Right,
and we'll open the proposals on the 24th.
right.
Do you want me to work with Larry on what's gonna go out?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, just,
Nice job, Larry.
it was only a 1-page or 2-page.
Try to condense it down?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's all in here.
Yeah, thank you. Okay,
Okay.
great, thanks, Larry.
And move the question?
Good question.
Motion's been made and seconded.
We did.
You did do a final vote,
We
yeah.
voted, did we not vote?
You did.
We did.
Yeah.
Did you vote? Aye. Okay.
Yeah, we voted. We're done.
Thank you.
Thanks, Larry.
Thank you.
How's the ice fishing?
I haven't gone up yet.
You're getting late.
Well, I'm a little nervous about that ice. I mean, I saw open water a lot of places, and there was some news thing that I actually missed the actual spot.
One guy
There's
told me
cars off, I don't know where it was, but.
One guy told me there's 4 inches in 19 Mile Bay, but it's not consistent.
Yeah, I would say that's the case with that. Weather. That would be my-
4 inches today. It's
There
cold.
are people out on Merrill Lake.
Oh, yeah.
But I didn't want to go out on the big lake until I was about.
Happy New Year,
Consistent
sir.
weather.
Okay,
Stock our swimming pools.
we don't have anything in the signature file,
Right, that's true.
thank God. Want to go to selections update, I think we've been meeting enough, so we don't have any updates.
If you can email.
Unless you have something.
Okay. I'd rather have it.
Thank you.
I have one
Great.
thing. And I didn't mention it on Friday. Planning board at our meeting last Thursday approved the site application for the 19-mile store. Reopening.
That's gonna be a grocery store?
Same thing as it was in the past, right? And the owner's intent is to be open year-round. So, as she was leading the meeting, reminded us that she'd be happy if we bought our coffee there when she's open, which makes sense. The store's gonna be open, if we don't patronize it, then it's not gonna be open for long. Anyway, my understanding is that the papers were passed on Friday, so it's,
When are
yeah.
you gonna open?
She didn't talk about that on Thursday, but I'm sure as soon as she can get,
Is it someone local?
um,
Or is it?
local now, but I think it comes from something, right, wasn't born and raised here. So, nice gal, and all sorts of folks are
Nice addition.
anxious for it to reopen, certainly.
Yeah.
So that's the only update I have.
Anything from you, Lloyd?
Excuse me.
Okay, do you want to get into warrant articles? Or do you want to do correspondence? Seems like correspondence.
Yeah.
Let's do correspondence, let's do it. Oh, I don't know if we want to weigh in on it yet. I guess Wolfboro was starting to talk about restricting access to Albee Beach and Cary Beach to Wolfboro residents only. And maybe we should send a letter off to their town manager to ask if we're included as part of their program where we send them big checks every year.
Since we're involved with their Parks and Rec department.
I think it's gonna be on their warrant. I think that's why I can't remember, but I
So
think
it
it's gonna
hasn't-
be on their warrant, I think.
Hasn't really happened yet. Okay. Maybe we should wait till it happens. So. We've got a interim inspection on Sodom Road Bridge, which says it needs no posting. Did anybody read this interim report? I read it, I went through quite a bit of it, and I didn't realize people drove 130 miles an hour on Durgan Road, but I guess they do. But it's an interim traffic study, which we forward on to Lakes Region Planning Commission did it, but I'd like to get a copy of this off to Mike Cryan, so I'll get with Karen after the meeting. I'm not gonna get involved in this back and forth with Chief Shigori. I think it's I don't believe his points are well taken. You read these?
Yes.
Okay. I don't need excuses. We asked for police protection at the polls. It's a statutory requirement. It's gonna happen. I don't need excuses.
Second.
We're gonna hear from the police department. Designers next, when are they coming in?
Well, they need a little, I don't recall offhand, to be honest with you.
They
I
need-
think they need more information from you first of what kind of presentations you want for town meeting.
Oh,
Mounted or.
I would say storyboard as opposed to electronic.
Like an actual figure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
a drawing.
like we
Yeah.
call it a mounted,
right.
correct, yeah, okay. A
Right.
visual,
Yeah.
okay, I'll just let them know that, okay.
Yeah.
Consolidated Communications sent us their log of all of the people who do not get served here in Tufton Road, which appears to be everybody in town. They don't give us a total. So I don't know how useful this is. I'm wondering if we couldn't get Jeff MacGyver. Is that really his name, MacGyver? It's troublesome. To come in and explain this to us. I mean, I think what they've given us is information that's useless, and we need the information that's useful.
I'd be
So-
glad to do that if it, like, I know that was the request originally of the Carroll County Broadband Initiative.
Right.
So they have the results as well, and
Right,
They'll
but
be
I
getting
think
it
this
from
is
the different
obfuscation in its finest form. They need to explain what this is, so
It's gonna come.
let's have them
sure.
come. So Clay's asked for some adjustments to his budget, as well as we have the numbers now for the vertical baler and the new hopper and a compactor using, with a new hopper and a compactor using our current hopper. So when we get to the warrant articles, I guess we'll include that.
Are the other things part of his budget?
No, I don't think so. I think they're all on the warrant.
Under requested action right here, aren't these part of his budget?
He's looking at something different. He's looking at the
What are
thing
you
I put in
looking
your
at?
folder about
She
budget
put this
adjustments
in
versus
your-
warrant
in your
articles.
folder.
Those, yeah. I haven't gotten to that because we're doing the correspondence right now. But this is,
What, didn't he put this in correspondence?
I put it in each of selectmen's folders,
Okay.
yeah, but, yeah, it's the same
Okay.
thing, I guess.
so what Clay's asking for is to change the per diem salary budgets by $1,702. The brush disposal line, he wants to change upwards by 4,000. A vote to approve the per diem line from 11/2/26 to 12/9/28, I'm sorry. Vote to approve changing the brush disposal line from 2,000 to 6,000. If both proposals are approved, the transfer station budget proposal will be increased by a total of $5,702. I think what came up earlier, and I can't remember how, that the $1,702 is not the total change. We're gonna have to change all of the social security calculations and all the rest of it going down the line. So we can talk about that.
He is due for his update next week, if that helps for our discussion.
Yeah, well, we gotta finalize the budget someday.
Right.
And what this is. Accessibility of the
no action required, I guess. I just put it in there. in
Did you
case
forward
wanted to
that on
speak
to
about
the
it.
town moderator?
Oh, yes, he sent it to you, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got all the RSA's involved with the election. There's a primary election
Can I see
coming up
that
on
folder?
February 11th. Polls open at 8 o'clock.
As far as the baler and things too, you have a handwritten write-up about from Clay in your folder, in your folder, each selectman folder.
Right.
Go with that.
Right. Anything else on the correspondence there, Mr. Wood?
No.
So moving on to warrant articles. How do we want to go? On our list here, or do you want to go through the ones that Karen typed up for us?
They should match, hopefully.
Yeah.
Let's see.
But the wording would help if you had, I don't know if you want to work on that today, but any changes you have to that would be helpful.
Okay, so, yeah, they're not in the same order, so.
Oh, they're not, sorry about that. Yeah, that's a good point.
I just soon work off of this.
Okay, so the first item on our sheet
Okay.
is the 19 Mile Beach Improvement Project, second phase, $34,429.
And that's off of a proposal, that number comes off their proposal, right?
Right.
With a
Yeah.
10% contingency.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? You want to vote on these individually, or you want to vote on them collectively?
We have to because we list how the selectmen voted.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
So I'll move that item for the warrant.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Cemetery Expendable Trust, tree work, there's no request.
Yeah, she changed her mind on that.
Did she change her mind? She wants money now?
No, that she doesn't want
Okay.
to move forward.
She
Conservation
wants money in
Commission.
her budget, she doesn't want to have it in a expendable trust, yeah.
Okay.
So, and we're not, Larry's not ready on the next one, is that correct?
Right,
I
that
mean,
one, Steve?
Steve.
Yeah, he'll come in this coming Monday, I believe, to speak to you about that one.
Okay, so that deal has not been consummated?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Federal Corner Road work. We've got the numbers from HED. Do we want to do part, all, none? I think.
I didn't see anything in the proposal as it was listed that I felt we needed to move to this year. I think it's good to do some work. I don't think we want to jump in with $100 and some $1,000 worth of work or whatever it was.
I agree.
So, I mean, we identified,
Well, my only concern, and I'm not gonna make a big deal out of it, if you don't wanna do it, it's fine, but if the road's flooding, then we can put a 36-inch culvert at
Right.
$3,800.
yep,
Then we can do that. I don't know if that 3,800, it must include labor. Yeah. it does. Just a suggestion, or we can wait until 2021.
I'm willing to wait until 2021.
I see this project and the Ledge Hill one as one that makes sense to do on an incremental basis, some of the stuff.
Correct.
So the question is, do we need to add money this year someplace for the addition of a culvert at the low point? Or is this something that would be absorbed within existing budget? And I don't know don't have the answer to that.
We don't have a road agent here.
No,
So let's
I think we need to defer,
Table.
table it.
Yeah.
Until we get
This-
a road agent, and
this-
we can
this
figure out where
particular-
we're going with it.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna agree that there's no warrant article for that.
Right.
Ledge Hill Road, we're gonna spend a couple $1 million.
No. Post table.
I live on that road, you know.
Yes.
but you don't live on this part of it, you live on the other part of it, right?
My sister lives up here. so-
Yeah.
Yeah, well, but she
I don't
wasn't
care.
here, she wasn't here this
I
morning.
don't care about Once again on this, they did a good job of listing out the elements.
Yeah,
And I think we can, if we'd ever get a road agent to show up at our meetings, could pick out some of those articles and change up what it needs to get changed up, maybe start the process of
Yeah.
getting that right. Okay, so 0 on Ledge Hill. Union Wharf repairs, we don't have that number yet from, when's Tyler coming in?
I can't recall offhand, I'm not sure, but I'll follow up on that. I can't remember.
Well, he's gonna come in by next week, so I'm not gonna drag this out that much longer. So give him a buzz today.
I think we had a date, I just can't remember offhand.
Get the quotes. So, on the, moving down the list, the trash compactor, which is a 4-yard stationary compactor with 15 horsepower, 3-phase motor, with a new hopper, is $26,130. The trash compactor without the new hopper is $20,080. What do you want to do? Did Clay give us a recommendation?
Yes.
Yeah, they're right there. Excuse me.
Yeah.
this is place,
That's McGuire you're looking at, but Clay wants to stay with Atlantic.
Yes.
So he's, okay, so he's at the no new hopper, right? $20,080 Atlantic, there you go, so.
Well-
He gave options, right?
so 24,000 with a hopper,
Yeah.
20,600 without a hopper. What I don't know is if
You buy a hopper.
he wants a hopper or not.
You know what, thank you for, when he told me this morning, I want to say that he circled what he wanted, and then
Yes.
the baler ones at the bottom, I think he's waiting for some more info, right, like, the baler ones. But the
Okay,
circling
so-
is what he wants.
Yes, he told me new hopper with, a new compactor with hopper,
All right, so
23.
I'm showing 26,130, where do you get the
Oh.
23,990?
That was a higher
This-
bid.
So this was one bid.
Oh,
This is
okay.
this is the other bid.
Okay. So
So,
we're,
yeah.
all right, so cutting
So-
way to the chase.
Yes.
Should we put
So-
23,900 and,
Put 24,000 in.
24,000.
24,000, so we're gonna change the trash compactor from 30 to 24.
Yep. I'll move that.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
3-0.
It's Article 4.
So it's -6. Vertical baler.
And that's the one he's waiting for more info on.
Okay, but we do have a number on that, do we
Yeah.
not?
Yep, he has
It's
some.
either a rebuild
That's a
one for
question.
7,400 or a new one for 15,000.
And he has a question mark, that's the one he's waiting for more on, I think.
Okay.
Well, we currently have 15,000 on the line.
So
I'll entertain
I'll move that.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, 3-0. Milfoil Expendable Trust.
Right. That was an item that we budgeted as part of the budget every year. Expend, sometimes don't expend. And when we were going through the budget this year, we agreed that we would move 20,000 of that into the expendable trust fund that is already existing.
So moved.
And then, as we use it from year to year, we may need to replenish it, but we don't keep going through the, well, we got 20,000, we only used 5 this year,
Let's put 5 in next year.
So, right,
Okay.
So
All right.
moved.
It's been moved. Do I have a second?
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, ambulance rescue truck, final payment 89,318.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Fire truck, payment 124,625.
Move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
SCBA reserve fund, 26, I thought, at what point do we stop putting money away for SCBA, or is that just an ongoing thing?
I think they were looking at doing a replacement in like 2 years, 2022.
We don't have enough money yet?
No.
Okay.
So,
Alright.
so move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Paving, did that change?
Your vote was just under the 291 for North Line Road and Dane. And then you got that quote for 125 to finish Dane. So you voted upon the $290,920. Not the warrant article, but to do that amount of work, I should say.
So we voted to spend 290, but we only raised 285?
That was a
Seems
CIP.
an unreasonable position.
That was the CIP amount.
Oh, the 285 was CIP?
Yeah.
Okay. So the 290, if I read this right, the 290 is gonna accomplish North Line Road, full depth reclamation base coat, and the upper section of Dame Roads, plus 50,000 for road preparation.
Yes.
Right.
Okay,
So,
what's your pleasure?
I will move it at $290,000.
Second.
Okay, just
And you
for
remember,
discussion.
we've already put 14,000 and something aside for road prep that we had left this year.
Right.
Right,
or
so I think that
whatever.
puts us on a pretty
So
reasonable.
that's gonna put us at 304 total. Why is there a question of increasing the warrant article to 425?
Where's 304?
290 and 14.
No, oh, yeah, all right,
Sorry.
yeah,
We know what car salesman we got on there?
yeah, you got it. Yeah, can
Where
I
did
talk
the
to your
four-
manager?
Where did the 425 come from?
If you want to finish
If
the
we
lower end
want
of
to, if
Dame
we want
Road.
to do the rest of Dame Road, we throw another 125 at it. I think we've already talked about that, that's,
Yeah, okay, so
That's
it's been
a bridge
moved and
too far.
seconded. All those in favor?
I have a question.
Oh, wait, okay.
The warrant article, number 3 is listed as 291.
Well, that was me drafting
We
it.
voted on 290,
yeah,
so we didn't add the 920 and round it off to 291.
Yeah, the $1,000 got lost, but that's
Okay.
fine. 290 is on.
I'm happy with 290.
yeah.
Okay, so we have a vote now?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Sanders, 2 Sanders, did we get a
Price on
actual
that?
price on that?
I believe he did.
I think so, that was to CIP. He gave that to CIP. Oh,
You haven't seen the quote.
I haven't seen the quote for the 2 Sanders.
I don't recall that. I think that was just what was CIP, was put in for
That's just a
CIP.
number. I mean, I don't know if.
I don't know if he had one to present to CIP or not.
I don't know.
I believe he did. But I haven't seen a written quote.
All right, so we gotta put that one on hold as well until we see Jim Beam.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, police cruiser computers, that's been handled by some other
Yes.
fund.
In the budget.
All right, we talked about this last time we met, or maybe the time before.
Yep, you already voted on that one.
Police cruiser, $60,000. We voted 2-1. Do we want to revisit that?
I'm happy to revisit. Here's the guy that I guess we need to ask.
Well, he voted no.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, the question comes up that we're gonna move on down the list to police facility capital reserve.
Yep.
And we've thrown over $150,000 at that.
Mhm.
But now we're up to 932,000, or a little less than that, but
I'm happy with where we're at.
Okay, Lloyd's not happy with it.
No.
I just voted no for it, and I told you why.
Okay.
Majority rules?
I appreciate that. I've been working on this bottom number. That's where my head is all the time. All the individual items, I'm not married to any of them.
I share your concern about the bottom line,
Okay,
and that was one of the unstated reasons. However, I mitigated it by saying the new police station is absolutely the top priority. And I told you I had no problem taking the 60 for the cruiser and, putting it, the money aside. And I supported your idea. Here again, the bottom line, tomorrow night you gotta be the salesman.
no, I appreciate that, and I'm not sure,
And bottom line, we're still better than we were in 2019, correct?
marginally at this point.
Right.
And we did ask the police chief to not buy a cruiser last year when it was due. Okay, we voted on that 2-1. The police facility architectural plans and costs at $60,000. Did we get a quote from Alba on that?
Andy was gonna follow up with them, I thought, but I hadn't heard anything. I can check with him. I think that's what was originally on that last quote you had from them. But I'm gonna follow up.
Well, just have him submit it in writing.
I'll just email them directly.
So that's,
Excuse me.
we haven't made a decision, have we?
What's that?
Have we made a decision
On what?
on that warrant article? Or we're waiting for Andy to,
On Alba?
yes.
Yeah, we can't vote on it till we have an actual number.
Right.
You have here 1220 requested Andy to obtain a firm quote from Elway.
Right. Okay. Police facility capital reserve,
Yeah, so we voted on that.
we did, and I want to revisit that if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I'd like to make that 125,000.
For purposes of discussion, I'll second.
All right, discuss away.
Explain what you want to do.
I'm just trying to drive this thing down a little bit. We're just pushing it, I think, a little hard. We still have to find out from Alba what the actual architectural fees are gonna be. And what was the other one that we hadn't quite gotten to?
The dock.
Yeah, the 19 Mile Beach, or the 19 Mile Bay, Union Wharf, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And right now, I mean, if we go to 125, we're gonna be pretty much zero-based budgeting for the year to year, which is not a bad place to be. If we add the wharf to it, at least we've got some substance that we're throwing at it. I think if we've got 450,000, I have to check with Diane what we've got in the capital reserve for the police department.
Yeah, it's 450 and change. I don't know what the exact current is, but neighborhood of that. Well,
I mean, I'd like to go into 2021, as I sit on the sidelines because we get thrown out of office, with half the money put away.
yeah. Well,
That's a
let me just suggest,
Okay.
we voted on 150 the other day. As things stand right now, we're still under what we did on the warrant last year,
All right.
right? So that's sort of a,
Bench.
knowing that we have all this stuff out there, what we don't put towards some of these things this year, we're just kicking down the road. if we get something that comes through before we finalize the warrant as it relates to wharf repairs and we decide to do it, we do some other adjustments to keep things in line.
All right, you want to leave that alone? That's fine.
That's my
I
recommendation
mean,
at this point.
I think if I could, we don't have, the two players that we need, which are Beam and Shigori. If I could get some firm answer from Shigori that we're gonna get part of that police facility in grant funding, that changes the perspective
Sure
altogether.
does. Sure
Now
does.
I'm going into the budget committee, into the town, saying, look, we wanna get $600,000 put away. He's gonna come up with 150,000 grants, and it's gonna cost you 150 grand to put the police station up. I mean, that works.
Yes, it
But
does.
the CIP's still looking at a 10-year bond.
Right.
I mean, if we could eliminate that, it would be nice, even if
Correct.
it took us an extra year. But I'm in agreement, we'll let it rest. Contingency 5,000.
So move.
Second.
All those, is this something that we can create a non-lapsing?
No, we have to vote on it every year.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Perambulation 5,000.
Have you heard anything back from Wakefield?
Molten Borough?
Yeah, Russ Wakefield.
Okay.
I actually talked to.
Yes, I saw a letter.
Right, since that, correct. He's gonna put an RFP out.
Right.
The town manager was gonna put an RFP out, I thought, for all towns.
Right. I talked to my surveyor that I use, who's got a reasonable price, because I had to pay him. Thought that the Molten Borough line, probably if you did GPS and marking and the whole thing, would be about $7 grand. So if we're into it for half, five's definitely gonna cover it. The Ospey line wasn't done that long ago, so that shouldn't be that, because wasn't that part of the.
And I think we may have all the GPS down on the hospital.
Right. Which leaves us with the Wolfboro line.
We haven't heard anything from either Ospey or Wolfboro, right?
Yeah. Well, Ospey wasn't that long ago, because this, wasn't Barry Ennis's whole thing
Yes.
Yeah,
premised upon that?
it's more than 7 years ago.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
Time flies.
yeah, it does.
that was done when,
Well, we haven't put any money away for perambulation in a long, long time, so.
That's right.
If we
Okay,
vote-
so I will move this and I will
as a placeholder.
suggest that we do this as a non-lapsing, so in case for some reason it just doesn't get done.
Yeah, and if we need to
23.
accumulate a
Right.
little more money to do all the lines, and
Yeah.
let's get them all done right.
Yeah.
Check with the satellites. I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so I didn't look at your wording, Karen, on the warrant articles.
I'll be happy to look it over this week.
Okay.
And
Yeah, let's put you in charge of that. That'd be
yeah,
great.
yeah.
Sounds good.
Happy to-
Okay. I'll hunt down Tyler.
Yeah, so what we have in here now, including some items that we haven't gotten finals on yet, is 931,872,
Yeah, you
Right.
took out the 6
and we added 5.
and added 5.
What have you got?
931,872.
Right. And and are we doing anything with Shirley Way, or are we just gonna work our word agent's magic on that? I mean, they were.
I think it makes sense to do some drainage work up there if we've got culverts that are non-functional, or we got water that's standing in areas. But again, I see that as a conversation with Jim.
Yes.
And I don't see the culvert work as being big money this year, although no
Well,
idea.
he doesn't have big money in his budget for it either.
No,
So,
so. Any idea, Karen, when Jim might be available?
I'm trying to see if he can come in Monday, but
Can he come in Friday when we're signing checks?
I'll ask.
yeah, why don't you find out if he can come in Friday?
Yeah.
So the sooner we get on to
Little
it,
work session
the
that would
better
be.
off we are. What was that? Did she do the math for you? No, she did not.
Did we vote on Article 16 yet, the 12,500 for land acquisition by conservation?
No,
No, because-
we haven't got the number on that yet.
Okay.
Right.
Can
He's
we-
sort of holding off.
And Article 17, to see if we will vote to de-establish the library capital reserve fund?
Nope,
Premature, right?
yeah.
Yeah. And
What are your thoughts on 18 about voting, rescinding any previous docking and parking ordinances?
Nope.
No, we decided not to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so. You were $165,000 under 2019 when last I looked. But we bumped this up by a bit. How much? I got that number right here.
Yeah.
So, 140,000. So we're pretty close to even.
Yeah. So do you have any, you need anything else from us to go forth and do battle with the?
No, I'm fine. I'm fine, we got plenty, but they won't want to stay up that late anyway. What else do we have here? So we've got our general budget settled, all the budgets are voted on.
General budget, are you going to modify Clay Gallagher's request?
You know, I don't know that I am.
Okay.
What's your thoughts?
Well, I did have a question with respect to the brush. It says we choose not to burn brush. Why? Why not burn the brush and save us $6,000?
I guess that's a discussion that you gotta have with Clay and with the fire chief. I honestly don't know why you don't.
I mean,
I mean,
it's not like we can't burn brush.
Well, so there's really currently no safe place to do it.
can't burn right there?
Well, the state has rules about how far back and
Well,
whatever.
it's difficult for me to believe that there isn't a place up by the
Don't we have a
transportation.
brush chipper?
Well,
No, we did it, they fixed it, we spent
Yeah.
money on it. I don't know.
yeah, so.
How about a compromise here?
Okay,
Do the brush, we have a good deal on it. It's a local contractor and it's lower. It's $900 a load to the next nearest contractor. And take no action on the per diem, only because it's so late and it impacts 3 other budgets.
so weren't there 3 items that he wanted? The brush, per diem, and wasn't there something else?
Oh, the warrant articles.
Yeah, I think we dealt with the warrant articles already.
Is that a motion?
So moved. We add, what we do is we add $4,000 to the brush account to make it 6,000.
Brush is
Correct?
Is that what he's asking for?
Yes.
I'll second that. would, however, like to have further discussion on why we can't burn it, or choose not to burn it.
Good.
Okay, where are we?
Somewhere in this.
Yes, to vote to approve changing brush disposal line from 2,000 to 6,000.
So that's gonna change his whole budget from 432,000 to 436,000. Some change.
And I'll make that part of my, thank you.
January 6th. All right, so do you want me to discuss, or do you want to vote?
It's, I'm ready to vote.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Aye. I just don't, I'm slapping wrists here. I don't like the idea of coming here January 6th and having a $10,000 change in our budget. That's inappropriate. I mean, I love Clay like a brother. I think he does an amazing job for us, but I don't appreciate that. So I'm gonna vote against it. But passes 2-1. So currently, just for public consumption, it appears that we're at 1 point, I thought I had 1.64%.
Percent, yeah.
Yeah,
That's right.
1.64% increase year.
And that $4,000 doesn't change the percentage, but.
No, it won't change too much. I don't have breakfast, I get a little grumpy. Any other business before the board? Any public comment?
Okay.
Oh, good.
Last week, we were having a conversation, I was out of the room recently today. Is the police department putting in for new cruisers this year?
Yeah, we have a warrant article. for
And
it.
you did a toss-up last week between $125,000 towards a station. Well, this year, maybe we'll just skip the police cruiser, use 125 towards a new building. That's what was said on the tape, anyhow, at least that I thought I heard. But now, you're gonna go with 125 for the building fund, and now we're gonna go for another 60,000 for a new cruiser. It was optional last week, and now it's written in stone, I guess.
I don't know that it was optional last week.
Well, it was discussed.
It was discussed, yeah, and we discussed
I'm
things until
only
we-
commenting on the
until we
discussion.
vote.
So your decision today is, we're going for both.
Our decision today is to fund a new cruiser and to also put money aside for the police
Thank you,
department.
that's all I wanted to know.
And actually, that's what we decided last week.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I must have missed that second half about.
But it's important to note that we're trying to keep the budget at zero base
Okay,
increase.
no,
So
just-
we're doing a good job.
That's what I thought I heard.
All right, any other crazy people out there in the audience? Nope.
Only I.
Okay, I'm gonna move we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.